Welcome to NBA Team Therapy, where I'm going to break down every single diagnosis for these losing playoff teams and what they could do better in the future. First patient up, we got the Los Angeles Lakers. Chief complaint? So you got swept again. Oh, I'm sorry. Gentlemen swept by the Nuggets again. Jesus Christ. 1-12 in the last 12 games versus the Nuggets, and they are not going anywhere. Had the lead in pretty much every game going into halftime, and somehow lost 4 of those 5 games, obviously. So understandably, Darvin Ham was promptly fired because Mike Malone outcoached him essentially every single game. So the biggest question for the Lakers, well, second biggest question, we'll get to the first one shortly. How is this coaching search going to go? And the biggest factor in that coaching search is factor number 1 and the biggest question for the Lakers. What is LeBron going to do this offseason? If hearing that question just annoyed you, then you're in for a long summer because that is going to be question 1 all summer long until he makes his decision. He has a player option that he can opt out of this summer. Now, in all fairness, Bleacher Report does have a report from Mr. Adam Wells where Mark Stein did say that all signals point towards LeBron re-signing, and that's from May 4th. So for all we know, this could already be a done deal, and this podcast is going to sound dumb in about a month. But until we get to that point, well, LeBron James, it cannot be assumed. So if he does stay, the question is, who the hell would want to coach LeBron James? Why the hell would you want to coach LeBron James? 7 of the 9 coaches LeBron James has had in his career have been fired while he's been on the team. The 2 exceptions, Ty Lue, who got fired shortly after the season he left, and Eric Spoelstra, who LeBron tried to get fired, but Pat Riley said, hell no, I run things around here, not you. And that was during the peak level of LeBron James. Not 40-year-old LeBron James. I know we like to pretend like he's still the same player he was back in 2009 and the early 2010s. For y'all that think that, go back and watch that LeBron. It's not the same player. Which, side note, much larger point I want to make about LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and every player that's still playing well this late into their careers. No, they're not the same players they were at the height of their powers. Go watch those players and you'll see what I'm talking about. They've just gotten really good at adjusting their games late in their career so that they can keep their same production. That is not the same thing. Okay, back to the coaching search. So I'm thinking about, with LeBron at this advanced age, it brings me back to this segment from the Bill Simmons Book of Basketball 2.0 podcast where he talks about what Doug Collins told him about aging superstars.
As Doug Collins always told me, there's nothing harder than coaching a superstar when they aren't a superstar anymore.
Doug Collins' credentials: he coached late 80s MJ when he was on his way to superstardom, and then he coached Washington Wizards MJ when he was well out of superstardom. So he's pretty qualified. I know there's the JJ Redick rumor. I think that's ridiculous. JJ Redick is a pretty sane person, and you have to be, unless they offer you all the money in the world, there's no way JJ Redick takes that job, right? Come on. But as far as improving the roster, I don't know how realistic it is competing at the top of the conference with an aging LeBron James and Anthony Davis as your best 2 players right now is anyways. They already have a tax bill of $11 million going into next year, and that's just if LeBron opts into the option. That doesn't include whatever its extension might be. So essentially that locks up their core of LeBron, AD, Rui, and Austin Reeves. So where is this upgrade going to come from so that they can compete with the Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves, the OKC Thunder, etc., etc.? You can't go after a max free agent. The only possible trade targets are Zach LaVine, Trae Young, or DeJounte Murray, depending on which one the Hawks decide to get rid of. Donovan Mitchell, maybe. Karl Anthony Towns, maybe. The draft capital is low even if you want to make that type of trade. They have this year's first because the Pelicans are going to decline. Looks like a low 20s pick. The Clippers second, the 2026 first, and then their first round draft pick from 2028 to 2030. So my final diagnosis for the Lakers is, the real question is, are you getting the commitment from LeBron James, and when? This is not a situation where he can leave y'all waiting for months on end, go on vacation and check in with Bronny and see how he feels. No. Y'all need an answer now. Because y'all need to find a coach. Y'all need to see what you're doing in the offseason. So obviously, rushing LeBron James has not been the order of business for most of his career. It is now, though, because y'all need to make this decision. And if he does stay, what is this big move you're going to be able to make? And if it involves trading all your first round picks for the rest of the decade, if you're supporting a 40-year-old superstar, is that in your best interest to do? That's for Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka to find out. Next patient. Woohoo! The Phoenix Suns welcome fresh off of the sweepy sweep with negative $103.5 million in cap space and the largest estimated tax bill of $104.6 million. Whew! So essentially, the core of your team is 36-year-old Kevin Durant, hasn't played 60 games in 3 years, Bradley Beal, a low-key, increasingly disgruntled Devin Booker. For the next 3 years for KD, 4 years for Bradley Beal, and 5 years for Devin Booker, barring Booker doesn't demand a trade. But an exact quote from Suns owner Matt Ishbia, he's saying everything's fine. The narrative that the house is burning is incorrect, said Ishbia. The Phoenix Suns are doing great. Excellent. Not as good as we want to be, not as good as we're going to do next year, but that's what we're going to figure out. What we've got to tweak, modify, and adjust to win a championship next year. Buddy, I don't know if you know how this cap space thing works, but ain't really that much room to do some adjusting. Outside of their number 22 pick they have this year, they don't really got no draft picks for the rest of the decade and not a lot of tradable pieces. Can I interest you in this contract we overpaid for Grayson Allen? Can I interest you in Yusef Nurkic as the centerpiece of a deal? But the thing is, I don't even think they need to make that big of a swing if you really want to turn this around. They have two options. Either they have the greatest G League scouting department the world has ever seen, and they're going to pull up some G Leaguer we've never heard of, and he's going to be Chris Paul at the point. Or they can go after a Tyus Jones-esque player in the offseason for free agency and just bring in a capable point guard. I think we're at the point now where we realize, hey, point guards are important, right? Devin Booker's great player, not a point guard, and that's fine. But again, how realistic is that when you're already looking at a tax bill of $104 million next year? But hey, it's not my money, Ishbia. If you want to take that alleged mortgage fraud's money and spend it on $100 million in taxes, go for it. Next patient. New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, so yeah, you got swept, but you're an 8 seed. You didn't have your best player for the series. You lost to the number 1 seed. What are you going to do? That's kind of supposed to happen. Looks like, according to Evan Sideri from Forbes Sports, the Pelicans are not expected to offer Brandon Ingram a contract extension this offseason. Ingram is eligible for 4 years, $200 million. But New Orleans will be going in a different direction. Trey Murphy is eligible for a rookie scale extension, expected to pay him $20 to $25 million annually. All signs point towards New Orleans prioritizing Murphy over Ingram as their wing of the future. New Orleans will have Ingram's $36 million salary and valuable draft capital to attempt to pair another star along Zion Williamson. Sounds like a great plan in theory. I like the fact that they're really believing in Trey Murphy more than the rest of us. Maybe they know something we don't, who knows? But who is that star? Are they going after Trae Young, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray, all those names you heard me say earlier with the Lakers? And as far as trading Brandon Ingram, are they a year too late? Because I know the numbers may not show it, but he definitely isn't the same. He doesn't look like the same player he was a year before. Maybe that's just he wasn't as bought in because he knows him and the Pelicans are kind of on the outs right now. That is definitely a possibility. But this is also the first team on his list so far that has currently $0 in a tax bill. So they can make a swing for a superstar. So let's say Paul George is going to end up being the biggest available free agent. We'll get to him shortly. Let's say he's like, you know what? I like Gumbo. I like Etouffee. Being yet ain't never hurt nobody. Let me make my way down to New Orleans. Would that be an interesting pairing? They got a team option on Alvarado as well. I'm assuming they're going to pick that up because he's one of their best wing defenders, not named Herb Jones. But let's not beat around the bush about what actually matters for the Pelicans. It's Zion Williamson. Post in-season tournament, dropping 25 pounds, we got to see as close to the version of Zion we've been waiting for since he's got drafted, culminating in the 40-point game against the Lakers, where after scoring point number 41, he hurt his hamstring with 3 minutes left in the game and had to leave, which is kind of the story of Zion's career. It's holy shit, we did it. Zion's here. This is what we've been waiting for. He's finally going to reach his potential, and he's injured again. God damn it. But, what gives me more hope this time around is I feel like something actually clicked after all the public shaming that happened after the in-season tournament. Now, did some of it go a little far? Maybe. Actually, no, that's not a maybe. Yes. Yes. Some of it went a little far, looking at you, Stephen A. Smith. But you can't tell me bullying doesn't work because look at what we got. So I don't expect to hear the same level of trade rumors and, oh, there's disgruntlement in the building about Zion for the Pelicans. I got faith in him this year. As far as his off-court escapades, that ain't got nothing to do with me. The man want to hit some professional games every once in a while. That's your business. As long as you ball, do your thing. Next patient. The Miami Heat. Looking at the 6th highest tax bill in the league next year to return essentially the same top 12 players that went 46-36 as the 8th seed last year. Are we ready to admit the regular season matters? Pat Riley damn sure is. They've always been playing with fire, with essentially throwing away the regular season with hopes of turning it on for the playoffs. That works when Jimmy Butler stays healthy and you're assuming the health of the rest of your team. Jimmy Butler next year is going to be 35 years old and looking at a contract extension. Him and Pat Riley have had some publicly dueling comments recently. Most notably, Jimmy Butler saying this about the Knicks and Celtics.
You got it?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, action. If I was playing, Boston would be at home. New York, damn sure would be fucking at home.
And Pat Riley returning with this rebuttal.
If you're not on the court playing against Boston or on the court playing against the New York Knicks, you should keep your mouth shut.
Culminating with, this is Pat's response when asked about Jimmy's extension.
Well, we don't have to do that for a year. We have to look at that, making that kind of commitment, okay?
Now, Pat Riley hasn't publicly shot at a player like that since LeBron left. So that's kind of out of character for him. So if he did it, I'm assuming it's for a reason. I don't know how much we should dig into that one. Maybe they're going to have a come to Jesus moment at some point. But if they do end up going away from Jimmy, which at a 35-year-old superstar, that's not unrealistic, what does building around Bam look like, and where does Jimmy Butler go next? Next patient. Next up, we got the Milwaukee Bucks, and losing in 6 to the little brother of your division. No Giannis for the whole first round. I have a theory about why that happened shortly. And a tax bill of about $19.4 million going into next year. Dame also mixed 2 games in the series, which for your 35-year-old point guard, kind of par for the course. Fired your first time ever head coach when he was 30-13, and then, because the basketball guys believe in karma, your ungrateful asses went 17-19 with Doc Rivers for the rest of the season. And you know what the real bitch of it all is? Y'all have no choice but to run it back next year, because all those star players are locked up. Yeah, Dame looked like a diminished version of himself this year. Oh well, he's your guy. Got him locked up. And Giannis had to carry way too much of the load defensively, because not only did you need his paint presence, because Brook Lopez also getting older and he's only one man, because you have no perimeter defense at all because you traded away Drew Holiday. Thank you, by the way, as a Celtics fan. You essentially replaced him with Damian Lillard, who was never known as a defender and is getting older. But again, I ask, where is this help going to come from? Unless Doc Rivers is locking himself in a basement somewhere and coming up with the greatest defensive scheme that the NBA has ever seen, this is now reality for you. Next patient. The Philadelphia 76ers losing in 6 to the New York Knicks, or the January Sixers, as the Sixers fans were calling them after they invaded the Wells Fargo Arena, which, hilarious, by the way. Great on you, Sixers fans. Funny enough, no tax bill going into next year. I will get to why that is in a second. But losing in 6 when Embiid was essentially playing on one leg and with one eye. Tyrese Maxey played his ass off that whole series. He looks like he's the real deal and then some. And before I go to the rest of the offseason, I want to play this quote from Embiid that I've really found to be interesting.
One of the big things, when it comes to winning is, you look at all the teams that have won. You can't just, put, people together for 1 year and hope that it's going to work out. So I think, that's the way to go. You just got to keep going, keep building around it and, find the right mix of people.
So first, he's not wrong per se. Look at the last 5 champions. The Nuggets, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Lakers, and the Raptors. Every team except the Lakers on that list, for the most part, was built on continuity. Even the Raptors, when they traded for Kawhi Leonard, the rest of that team was there for years. Plus, Embiid had to deal with the process his whole life. So he's never really had team stability his entire career. And since the process started 2013 to 2014, the Sixers have been to the playoffs 7 times and haven't even reached the conference finals. So yeah, I think he wants some continuity around him. Counterpoint, Your GM is Daryl Morey, and continuity isn't really what he believes in. He said as such.
We're very well situated to use all the tools, trade, free agency, draft, to upgrade the team.
The Sixers currently only have 4 active players on their roster for next season. And Tyrese Maxey is a restricted free agency, and breaking news, they're going to give him a max deal. So let's just say 5. So who does Embiid want to bring back so badly? Kelly Oubre? Okay, I see that. I'll even give you Kyle Lowry. Veteran experience, been to a chip, has a ring. I feel that. But who else? The Sixers are going to have another slot for a max player. You want to give that up for Tobias Harris? Like, come on, bro. Also, I know there's some Sixers fans who want to see Joel Embiid traded. Stop it. Like, just stop. He's a top 5 player in the league, regardless of how you feel about him. You don't trade those players away unless it is a mind-numbing offer. And mind-numbing offer is not available right now. Let Daryl cook for one more offseason. See what happens. Maybe they take a big swing in the hits. It's better than what y'all been doing. And then we'll reevaluate a year from now if it goes to shit again. Next patient. Los Angeles Clippers, I've been waiting for you. No tax bill going into next year. Congratulations. Only about $1 million in tax cap space, though, so if you re-sign literally anybody, we're going to go over that apron. Losing in the first round in 6 games where, after being tied 2-2, the last 2 games were objectively stinkers. You better thank the good Lord Drake and Kendrick decided to lose their mind the day y'all lost Game 6. 2 players that you need to sign to extensions are James Harden and Paul George, both of whom want max deals. And you also have Kawhi Leonard, your perpetually injured superstar who played only 1 game in this series, who you already signed to a max deal, I believe, last year. Also, the game he played in, you lost. I feel like that's relevant to this conversation. With a new arena you're opening in August, consistent star power is a thing. You need faces on the season tickets if you're going to sell out and finally compete with the Lakers and get out of their shadow in LA, which best of luck on that. Me personally, I would have moved the team to Seattle and brought back the Supersonics, but that's just me. And this is where I think it's time for the Clippers to have a real conversation. There's a lot of talks about how they should move on from Paul George. I think we're looking in the wrong direction. If you need star power and you need to sell season tickets, why would I buy a season ticket to see Kawhi Leonard when I might not get to see Kawhi Leonard? He just played his highest amount of games since 2017, pre-tearing his quad off the bone, and it cost them playing in the playoffs for the most part. To me, it is very clear that Kawhi Leonard should be the one putting his house on the market, not Paul George. I know it's harsh because it's related to injuries, and I'm not one of those people that say that Kawhi Leonard's faking his injuries. I believe he's legitimately hurt, and when he is playing, he's one of the best players in the league. But if you're a team trying to move forward and make these decisions, it makes no sense to me that, yeah, Paul George has struggled with his injuries, but for the most part, in the playoffs, he's there. And as far as James Harden, you're probably not thrilled you have to sign him to a max contract, but the price is the price. You got to do what you got to do. I don't know how competitive they're going to be able to be with the top of the West, Nuggets, T-Wolves, OKC, but dealing Kawhi Leonard for some pieces is a great place to start. Keeping Kawhi and losing Paul George for nothing is an awful place to start. Don't do that. Next patient. Oh my God. Give it up. Give it up for the Orlando Magic. Come on down. Congratulations. Y'all have nothing to be ashamed of. Made it to Game 7, and let's be honest, no one expected you to win a Game 7 on the road where your best player is 21 years old. The real question is, now that you have to look at your roster for the future and hope to improve, which you must improve. One of my biggest pet peeves, I'll say this every podcast if I have to, is when teams overachieve and they just assume they're going to keep improving the next year and they make no offseason changes. I hate that. It always goes wrong. I don't know why teams continue to do this. So the question you have to balance is, you look at each player and you say, okay, will this guy get better or do we need to upgrade this position? They do have a slot for a max player if they want to sign said player. But the problem is they need a second option. They don't need a first option. Paolo Banchero is their first option. I think he's proven that. And since he's 21, he's only going to develop into a better player as the years go on. And your biggest priority should be upgrading your three-point shooting because Lord knows they need it in the worst way. They were 29th in the league in three-point shooting at 33.3%, and they were even worse against the Cavs in this series at 30.9%. There's no point in having someone as good at slashing kicking as Paolo Banchero is if he doesn't have quality shooters to throw it out to. You're wasting his time and yours. So the crossroads I'm looking at for them is, okay, Do you go in on, let's say Paul George does decide to leave the Clippers? Do you go in and give him a max deal and try to make him at an older stage of his career your second option? Could be a plan. Or do you spread that money out and go grab a Malik Monk, a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, depending on the price? Shit, maybe Klay Thompson if he decides to accept the fact that he's no longer a superstar. Me personally, I'd go with the latter. Let's build this team around Paolo. Hope that Franz Wagner can develop into a legitimate second option, and we can supplement whatever we don't have around him with this additional shooting that we can add in the offseason. But all in all, great season, guys. Great season. Shout out to the Orlando Magic. We got to get to the teams that actually are still in the playoffs, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll get right back. All right, so I don't know how in-depth I'm going to get with these playoff quote-unquote previews because these series are actively happening. As I'm recording this, game 1 of the Nets and Pacers just happened, and game 2 of the T-Wolves and Nuggets very literally just ended like 5 seconds ago. So I'm dealing with a little bit of information, but I promise most of this I wrote before these games took place. We'll go in order. So the thing I like the most about the Knicks and Pacers series is it's the ultimate styles makes fights type of series, and I love those types. The name of this game, this series, the biggest key is going to be pace. And pace is defined as possessions per 48 minutes. There's an actual metric for this, so we're not just guessing. The Pacers were the second fastest team in basketball this year at 100.2.16 possessions per 48 minutes. The slowest team in the league were the New York Knicks at 95.96 possessions per 48 minutes. The halfway point between that is 99.06. And I'm willing to bet for every game this series, whichever way that pace number goes is going to decide who wins the game. If it's under 99.06, the Knicks will win. If it's over 99.06, the Pacers will win. As I said, I wrote that before game 1. The pace for game 1, 98.00. The Knicks won. And the reason why the pace is so important is because the Knicks, for the most part, really only plays 6 or 7 guys. And more than likely 6, and their goal is to beat the other team up. And I feel like we're going to know how most of these games are going to go either in the middle of the second quarter, or if the game is closer and we start to see the Knicks die down towards the end of the fourth, if they are able to keep pace. If you got these players playing all these minutes, towards the end of the game, eventually they're going to have to die down. They're in great conditioning, but they're still human. Like Josh Hart didn't leave the floor last game. He played all 48 minutes. Dante DiVincenzo played 44. Jalen Brunson played 43.5. Speaking of Jalen Brunson, there's not a single person happier in the world to be playing a different team this round. Imagine going from playing Philly, whose whole goal, Nick Nurse and them, with the typical Nick Nurse game plan, good at basketball, get them, not to mention Joel Embiid in the paint, ready to swat things away, playing against a significantly less physical team with the Pacers, who arguably are the worst defensive team left in the playoffs right now. Of course, Jalen Brunson went for 43 points on 53% shooting the first game. Of course he did. The Knicks made the Pacers play their game, and the Pacers are not equipped to play that game. They don't have the facilities for that. I'm also not sure how sustainable this is going to be for the Knicks for an entire series, especially if at some point Tyrese Halliburton decides he wants to join the series. I know you're hurt. I know your hamstring hasn't been the same all year long. 6 total points on 6 total shot attempts is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable, especially for an all-NBA guy. Come on now, what are we doing? But if the Pacers can turn up the pace and make the Knicks pay for playing all those starters, all those minutes, because the Pacers bench was able to outscore the Knicks 46-3, and the Knicks still had to make a late game push just to win that game by 4. So the chances of this series turning around on its head, especially once it gets back to Indiana, are pretty high. If I had to say who would win this series, it would have to be either the Pacers win it in 6, which would mean they have to win game 2, which will be happening when this podcast releases, or the Knicks win in 7, because I just don't think the Pacers can win a game 7 at MSG. I don't know who's walking into MSG and winning a game 7. I don't think anyone can do that. And all of that is contingent upon Tyrese Halliburton getting his head out of his ass and deciding he wants to be an all-NBA player again. And I don't think he has the facilities for that. So give me the Knicks for the rest of this series. Timberwolves versus the Nuggets, and oh my God. Oh my God. Again, this game just ended, so the analysis may not be as deep on this one, but just bear with me. I went into Monday's game thinking, all right, the T-Wolves already got their game on the road. No Gobert tonight. The defending champions surely are going to even the series going back to Minnesota, right? Right? Nope. How about the T-Wolves win by 26? One of the biggest reasons why I went into this series thinking the Nuggets were going to win it, and I still think the Nuggets are going to win it, just to be clear, but I thought the Nuggets would dominate and possibly win in 5 because Karl Anthony Towns plays for the Timberwolves. And I just knew that Nikola Jokic was going to get him to foul out every single game. But even in game 1, when he was in foul trouble, he had, I think, 5 fouls, had to sit with about 6 minutes left in the fourth. Naz Reid came in and on both ends of the floor, lost his damn mind, so it didn't matter. Karl Anthony Towns came out in game 2, put in 27 points, 14 boards, and made his presence felt on the other end of the floor. And if you're telling me you're going to get 2 more games from that from Karl Anthony Towns, then, hey, bruh, all bets are off. You look at the Nuggets, and they haven't even been down in a series since they lost to the Warriors in 2022. I would love to do the whole championship DNA. They know how to win. But if we really remember their playoff run last year, the Nuggets were so much better than everybody, they never really struggled. Yeah, they lost a couple games here and there, but those games were contingent upon Devin Booker and Kevin Durant going absolutely ballistic for a couple games there. An incredible Eric Spoelstra coaching performance, and that was about it. So they had that much of an advantage last year. That is not the case this year, especially with the way the Timberwolves are able to play defense. They are their equal, if not better, because they have a player who genuinely believes he is the best player, not only in this series, in the world, in Anthony Edwards. I know we've been waiting for me to get to Anthony Edwards. That is a man on a mission. I really wish y'all would relax with the Kobe Bryant, face of the league, Michael Jordan comparisons, partially because I'm a Celtics Tatum guy, and I think it's disrespectful how y'all passing over my guy. We'll get there shortly. But the other half is, can we let the 22-year-old get to a conference finals first before we compare him to some of the greatest players ever? Thank you. But walking into the defending champion's house, putting up 43 to take game 1 is ridiculous. That's, oh my God, what a performance. And now they're in a situation where they can split at home. They only got to win one of the next 2, and they are up 3-1 or 3-0 at some point. No one could have seen this coming. If I had to bet between the Timberwolves being up 3-0 by the time a lot of you hear this podcast, and the series being 3-3 and we're looking at a game 7 by the time I make my next one, I'm going to go on game 7. And I hope it's game 7 because, dear God, I'll gladly take 5 more games of this series, please. At some point, the Nuggets are going to be able to come back into this. And I know the Jokic defenders and the Jokic hive are like, why do y'all keep saying that Jokic is having bad games? Look at his numbers, look at his numbers, look at his numbers. Guys, when we say Jokic is having bad games, we're talking about turnovers and efficiency. And if you're a real Jokic stan, you of all people should know his efficiency and his turnovers are not what we are used to seeing right now. Right now for Jokic, we're looking at 11 total turnovers in 2 games, shooting 20% from 3 and shooting about 42% from the field in total. This is not the Jokic we're used to seeing. And also, if Jamal Murray is legitimately hurt and is not going to be the Jamal Murray we're used to seeing, who is able to close out these games and not get roasted by Anthony Edwards on the other end of the court, by the way, that would also be helpful, then the Nuggets are in trouble. If anything, if they can steal game 3, sit Jamal Murray's ass down for game 4 and worry about the rest of it later, because it looks like he's not going to get healthy at some point. Unless he sits down, because this is not the Jamal Murray we're used to seeing. He's clearly a diminished version of himself. But I'm hoping and praying, as should the rest of you, that this series is going to go 7 games. Gotta wait for these Tuesday games to actually happen so I could talk about those series. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll talk about that. Hello from the future. It is now tomorrow, and the Celtics, Cavaliers, and the Mavericks versus the OKC Thunder just happened. So I'm going to go ahead and break down game 1 of both those series and preview the rest of them. Starting off with Celtics, Cavs, and game 1 went about the way I expected it to go, with the Celtics putting the belt to the ass to the Cavaliers. So some of my pregame notes I had was Donovan Mitchell, we don't give him enough credit for being an outstanding playoff performer pretty much from the second he stepped foot in the NBA. On those Jazz teams from his rookie year, not only was he the number 1 option, for most of those series, he was the only option because Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert weren't going to score 30 points if he didn't. And on this Cavaliers team, it has been no different. 33 points for Mitchell this game. Second highest total is Evan Mobley with 17. Funny enough, to highlight how great of a performer that Donovan Mitchell was, he had 33 points and 6 assists for the Cavs. He's the 4th player in league history to score 30 or more points in 6 straight playoff series openers, joining Michael Jordan, who did it 3 times, Kobe Bryant, and Wilt Chamberlain. So some pretty damn good company there. With that said, last series he went to Game 7 and his team only averaged 95.9 points a game against a team full of a bunch of babies. With all due respect to the Orlando Magic, I mean babies age-wise, not mentality-wise, which is how I knew that they just weren't going to have the firepower to keep up with the Celtics on a game-by-game basis. And Game 1 showed exactly what we thought it would be, with the Celtics coming out and beating them 120-95 in a game that honestly was never close. It was only tied twice, lead only changed twice, and then for the rest of the game, the Celtics just held a steady lead. The average margin of victory for the Celtics since dropping Game 2 to Miami, because Miami had a historically great shooting night all of a sudden, has been plus 22.8 points. So they have not only been winning, they have been beating the dog shit out of every single team that has stepped in front of them, which has only been 2 teams. But every time they stepped on the court, they've been winning these games by a lot, is the point I'm trying to prove. Apologies, it's 1 in the damn morning, so I'm gathering my thoughts. And I would love to say that series over, 3 more games, and let's get ready for whoever wins the Knicks Pacers. But if you've listened to this podcast before, you know how I feel about my Celtics being unserious. So the following is going to be a nitpick for someone who's only thinking about the finals when it comes to this team. Almost everybody seems to acknowledge the variety of offensive options that are on the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are just such a deep team. All this talent. And everyone seems to know it, with the exception of Jayson Christopher Tatum. And I just don't know why. Game 1 is an example of kind of what's been going on all playoffs long, sneakily. We've been winning, so I haven't made a big deal of it. But it is worth noting once we start getting to some harder matchups, Tatum, for whatever reason, shooting-wise, he's been off. But he still leads the team in shot attempts for whatever reason. Essentially had the same usage rate as Jaylen Brown, who it was his night. Let me tell you, 32 points tonight, 15 of them coming in the first quarter. Way to go, JB. Love when you come out the game swinging. But at the same time, I get it. Anthony Edwards is cooking right now. Jalen Brunson is carrying his team. The crown for best American player that is rightfully Jason Tatum's appears to be up for grabs right now. I feel it. But, Jayson, you don't have to live like this no more. You've done the whole putting up big numbers and knocking off old guard players. Like when they gave Anthony Edwards credit for sweeping KD's team out the first round, I laughed because Jayson Tatum and the gang did that 2 years ago. Oh my God, he scored 40 points with his season on the line. Hey, can I remind you of Game 6 against the reigning NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks with our season on the line? Jayson Tatum going for 46. Remember that one? 51, Game 7. Series on the line literally a year ago against the Sixers? No? Just me? Okay. And there's a reason why all these fan bases use Jayson Tatum as the measuring stick for their stars. And every time they start balling, what do you hear them say? Oh, such and such is better than Jayson Tatum, whether it's Anthony Edwards, Brunson, SGA, you name it. Because deep in their psyche, they know who the man is. They know who the top dog is. But we don't need that right now. We don't need it right now. Go ahead, come up off that pill. Let Derek White cook. Let JB cook. We're paying him $1 gajillion. Derek White didn't shave his head for no reason. Don't make him do it in vain. And come June, when the Celtics are lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy and you can walk into the Paris Olympics as the champion, no one's going to care that you didn't take as many shots as you wanted to Game 3 of the second round of the playoffs. Who cares? Okay, now for the rest of the series. Much like every Celtics series until more than likely the finals, it's not about skill. It's not about talent. It's about focus and seriousness. Can the Boston Celtics be the best version of themselves for 48 minutes for 4 games in a row? I believe that they'll be able to do so this series. I got faith in my guys. I do. I'm back believing, even though y'all just heard me bitch and complain for the past however long this is going to end up being after I edit it. I'm thinking this series is over. Call it a sweep. There's games every other day. So more than likely, by the time I record my next podcast, this series will already be over. And we'll be waiting for whoever wins Pacers Knicks. Can't wait. Next up, we got Mavericks Thunder. And unfortunately, a lot of the stats that I like to use are not available because the game just ended, and that is annoying as hell. So no advanced stats. So thankfully, I took some notes during the game, which I never do, but I love y'all, so of course I did it. Pre-game notes. This series is going to put my young nigga syndrome to the test because I genuinely believe it is almost impossible to make a deep playoff run if you've never done it before. And considering OKC is the second youngest team in the league, they've never done this before. They just won their first playoff series. And you could tell me that Luka and Kyrie are the best two players in this series. SGA would strongly disagree. Everybody in Oklahoma would strongly disagree. And I might tend to agree with them. But for OKC to win this series, Jalen Williams got to eat his Wheaties. That 21.3 a game that he got last series in 4, that's cool, but we got to take it up a level if we're going to compete with the best of Luka and Kyrie. We got to make those Kawhi comparisons jump a level and really become reality. But sure enough, we come out game 1, SGA outscored Luka and Kyrie by himself in the first half. He had 19, they had 18. Granted, Luka hurt his knee halfway through the first quarter and did not look like the same player for the rest of the game. I'm waiting on the injury update for that. It does not look like we're getting that anytime soon. But I'm not just going to blame it on the injury. OKC's defense played out of their mind, and their home crowd absolutely loved it. There's certain teams that I'm happy are good again. The Knicks are in this category. The Cavs are in this category because we forgot just how great these home crowds are. OKC's home crowd is fantastic. And I haven't seen them go crazy the way they do for this defense since Russell Westbrook was there and he was cooking. It's that level in there. And it shouldn't be a shock to us that the defense looked that good because they were 4th in defensive rating this year. And for y'all that don't know what defensive rating means, it's just points per 100 possession. They were at 108.2, 108.4, somewhere in that range. And then to bring back Jalen Williams, so he went to the locker room middle of the third quarter, and I got concerned. I'm like, all right, the rest of the team's playing really well. They're hitting a bunch of shots they typically don't hit. So I'm thinking, all right, shit, he goes to the locker room. He's out for the rest of the game. Who knows how this fourth quarter is going to go? Apparently, he just went to the locker room to eat Popeye spinach because he came back out in the fourth, went 4 for 4, 10 points, allowed 10 points, and OKC just pulled away. Last point I want to make about OKC before I end this podcast. A lot of you were telling on yourselves that you have never seen OKC play before, specifically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I enjoyed watching it the entire time. I'm seeing tweets like, damn, SGA gets every single call. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, he does. I'm sorry you're just now figuring this out. I even saw somebody say Lou Dort plays really good defense, and I was like, okay. All right. Let me go ahead and close this app because y'all don't know what's going on. But for the rest of this series, because I don't think every game is going to look this bad. I like OKC for the rest of the series, maybe in 6, but I don't think it's going to look this bad. Obviously, if you're Dallas, you can't turn the ball over that much. But the real thing is, I just want to see Kyrie get involved earlier. Like, he had about 8 points in the first half and then tried to go crazy later in the game. But I don't think that's sustainable for the rest of the series. You can't wait to take over this game. That worked against the Clippers. That's not going to work against this OKC team. They're too good. And if they get into a rhythm defensively, it's going to be too little too late. All right, that about concludes today's podcast. I got to hurry up and edit this so y'all can actually hear it in the morning. So I've been Kev BK, beloved. Go ahead, like, follow, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch y'all next week.